What's up, fungal associates? Welcome to Completely Arbortrary. This is the podcast about trees and other such things. I am one of your hosts. My name is Alex Crowson.
Hi, Alex.
And across the way, we have Casey Clapp.
What's up?
Clearly paying attention to what's happening.
No, I totally agree. I actually, I am. I'm paying very slight attention.
Yeah.
That was a ruse that whole time.
Really?
Yeah, I was also reading, but you know, it's what your brain does. It goes back and forth quickly between things.
Are you saying you were rapt?
Yes,
But you had the appearance of someone who was being very rude and standoffish.
Yes. However, I was not.
Well, that's great news.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Casey.
Hi, Alex. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good.
Great. Happy to hear it.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Everything seems to be working out. I woke up this morning and I was like, ugh. But I had I took a one of those congestion pills.
Yes.
And the sort that on the back says you might be drowsy after this.
Okay.
Whenever I have one of those, and this isn't like the NyQuil kind of thing where it's like specifically be like, no, you're gonna be drowsy.
Totally.
This one just says, yeah, maybe.
It could happen.
Don't use machines. But anytime I take one of those, I always wake up and I'm just like, blah.
Yeah.
I cannot get out of bed. So. You also had some things to do this morning.
Yep.
So it was convenient because each time I rolled over and fell back asleep for a half hour, I then turned back around and you were like, how about one more hour? And I was like, yes.
All right.
Let's keep going. So
keep it going.
It ended up working out.
Big money.
Just great. Yeah. So yeah, we hit the jackpot this morning.
Good. I had my own medication snafu this morning.
Oh no.
As you know, I'm take a pill for my attention deficit disorder.
Oh, is that ADHD?
So high definition attention deficit disorder.
Yeah, honestly, you can see because he looks really clear sometimes, and that's when you know that he's got a treat.
And then when I don't take it, I get all fuzzy.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I this morning I was like, I was doing my normal morning routine, and then I was like, wait, did I take that pill? I couldn't remember. I was like, I can't take another one if I don't remember that I took the first one. Else I'll lose my mind.
This is why you got to get the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That's a great idea, but of course I don't do that. It's just kind of the person I am.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, I'm going to go in the other room. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to note that I took it. And then 5 minutes later, I was like, fuck, did I take that?
What?
And this happened 3 times. It was
Alex,
so infuriating.
I can't believe this.
I don't think I ever took it.
You never took a single pill.
I don't think so.
Now, see, I don't believe you. I think you're going crazy. Is your memory okay? Did you hit your head?
That's part of high definition attention deficit disorders,
That's
memory
wild.
loss.
Wow, you should really get a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday box.
I've heard this before somewhere.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You can't remember when, though.
We've got a, quote,
Hey.
weird tree to talk about today.
Yes, we do. We have a weird tree to talk about today.
Before we do that, do you have something?
I also need a lighter. All right, Alex, as you're saying, whatever it is that you're saying, I am going to light us a stick of Palo Santo.
All right. Can I have that?
No.
God damn it. Please.
No, I got this. We got this. I think, don't you have one? This was a gift, which is why I can't give it away.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
You better cut that in half and give me my half.
All right, what do you mean your half? That's not how gifts work. If someone gives me a gift, that's not your gift.
I own 50% of your company.
This was for me. God, capitalism is really just busting my balls today.
Wow, that's a big flame.
It is a big flame
in my
because
little apartment producing a vast amount of smoke.
Yep.
Okay.
There you go. I think you can smell it now.
It smells great.
Yeah. That is we're talking about a quote weird tree today that's in this weird family.
Oh, how about that?
That's where I thought you were going to go.
Okay.
When you said speaking of family.
Yeah.
And then this tree, Palo Santo, is in the family that we are about to cover. Well, we're covering the tree from that family.
That's so fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks, Casey, for burning that Santo.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And speaking of, we are talking about the Gumbo-Limbo tree today.
Which, to be very clear, is not Palo Santo.
No, but it's in the family, you said.
It is even in the same genus.
That's amazing.
Exactly. Genus we're talking about today, that is Bursera simaruba.
Simaruba.
Which I really like saying. It sounds like where it's from. We'll talk about that later, though.
Simaruba, Jamaica. Ooh, I want to take you.
Yes, you get it. Thank you, Alex.
Right. Well, we will talk about this Gumbo-Limbo after a quick break. We'll be right back with Completely Arbortrary. Welcome back to Completely Arbitrary. Today we're talking Gumbo-Limbo, Bursera, Bursera, simaruba.
That is right.
Well, Casey, let's imagine, as we do every episode. Oh gosh, I don't even know. Let's say we are in Aruba.
Okay.
And we come across some Gumbo-Limbo trees.
You just come across someone talking a bunch of random shit.
In a Gumbo-Limbo. Let's ID this tree.
Let's do it, Alex. So here's the thing. This is a tree barely native to the United States, just at the very far southern tip of Florida.
Okay.
So it's a tropical tree in every regard, and it grows in down South Florida through all of the islands, down through the Keys, the Everglades, everything like that. And then it also grows along Mexico and all of the Caribbean islands down to all the way to Nicaragua, Venezuela, Brazil. It's essentially the entire tropical area of the Gulf and the adjacent Atlantic Ocean.
Cool.
So that's where it grows kind of natively all over these places. And it's a tree that grows semi-tall. And I say semi-tall because compared to the other trees around it, it's probably of a height, you know? But compared to trees elsewhere, it's really like not that tall. Like 80 feet would be outrageous, but 60 feet is pretty much what you'd expect. Around 20 meters is what I've seen.
That's tall for this area.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you plant it in your front yard, which the highest you could go is about Tampa, Florida, natively speaking, it gets about, 20, 30, 40 feet tall. Kind of almost a third to two-thirds of its height in its native habitat.
It's a nice manageable tree.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the thing about it, though, is that as it grows up, it grows into multiple stems fairly early on. It's not the kind of tree that kind of has one solid, perfect stem that just grows up and then has a big poof of branches on top. It usually starts to branch fairly low along its main stem. Thus, creates multiple main stems. And it creates this canopy that I can only describe as widespreading, and it kind of looks to me like if you take an oak tree, right? You got a big oak tree, it's got this tall stem, and then it kind of branches out and becomes this big kind of thing. But it's usually on that one single stem. Monopodal is what that's called.
Yes.
This tree looks like you just cut off that first stem and just plant the whole canopy right on the ground.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, do you see that?
I love that. It's almost
great.
like a Japanese maple kind of look.
Yeah, totally. It gets that it just kind of has this shape where it curls around and has wide spreading branches. So it gets about as wide as it does tall if you put it in like a big open area. In fact, I think that's half the reason it gets taller in its native habitat is because it's forced up by the other trees around it. They're all growing up.
Can't go sideways, gotta go up.
Gotta go up. You get it. It's a beautiful song.
Is it related to the madrone at all? It looks quite madronish.
It does. It's not related at all. Okay. But it is. It just looks so similar.
Yeah,
like that's. I've actually made that reference, and it'll come even more apt here coming up pretty soon. But first, we got to talk about the boring parts before we get to the more exciting part.
Okay.
So it grows, and hold on, where are you going? So it creates this really interesting canopy as it grows up and around. And it grows fairly quickly. Of course, it's a tropical tree growing in tropical areas, so it just kind of continuously grows. And it puts out alternately arranged, pinnately compound leaves. So it looks kind of like an ash tree, except, of course, ashes are opposite and not, generally tropical. So it sends out these leaves, and they're kind of a light, kind of bright green on top, a little bit duller beneath, and they have entire margins on between 3 and 9 leaflets.
How about that?
Yeah, there you go. So if you're ever walking around, you see a pinnately compound leaf that's evergreen, you can think, okay, that might be a Gumbo-Limbo tree. What would you look for next, you ask?
Well, I have a note about the leaves.
Oh, you do?
If that's okay.
Of course.
They are the most boring looking leaflets
you think
I've
so?
ever seen.
You're killing me, really.
But
Why?
they earn points for being pinnately compound.
Well, why do you think they're boring?
They just look like a Microsoft clip art of a leaf.
Wow. That's rude, actually. Like that's just
you
plain
cannot
rude.
disagree. Look at this leaf.
I've seen the leaf. I think it looks fine.
Yeah,
wow, but
fine.
I mean, but I see what you're saying.
It's serviceable.
But I don't know. That was a deep cut. It looks like a Microsoft clip art version. Like they don't even do clip art anymore. They stopped doing that.
I know.
That's how bad it was.
It's a shame.
No, you're upset by that.
I love clip art.
Yeah. Okay. So what are you saying? What's your comparison here? It's ridiculous.
It's just so boring.
All right, fine.
Impress me, tree.
Impress me.
Well,
All right.
the thing that's coming up is going to impress me.
Yes, exactly. Now, before we do that, let's stop and talk about these flowers and the fruit.
Okay.
You can also identify them in the springtime or very late winter with these really kind of like drab-looking panicles of flowers. They're kind of a whitish, greenish, small flowered just bunch that comes out at the end of the twigs, right before the new stem elongation kind of period happens. So they just look like these kind of little fireworks coming out with small little whitish greenish flowers. They don't really do much. Like they don't really do much for me. They're not like
very utility.
Yeah, they look almost like, again, ash flowers, which if you see certain ash species flower, you can be like, oh yeah, those are flowers. That's about as far as you can go.
Yeah.
You can just make a statement of that is a flower.
Extremely boring.
Yeah, there's just not a lot to it.
This tree.
But the seeds they produce are a little bit more exciting.
Okay.
So let's bring it back up here a little bit. The fruit comes in a really interesting shape. So it is apparently a 3-parted capsule that starts out green and then slowly but surely becomes red, splits open into those 3 parts, and then has a triangular seed inside that I've read it specifically as a seed, but other times people say that it is a nutlet. So botanically, I'm not 100% positive which one it really comes down as, but it is adored by birds. Birds just love these seeds.
Do we know what kinds of birds?
You name it.
Okay, cool.
All the kinds of birds that live down there apparently just adore them.
It does look pretty yummy.
It does, right? It kind of it does. It has this red kind of berry-like appearance, and that's what most people call them, is kind of a berry or a drupe. When really, yeah, botanically they're not technically either of those things.
Sure.
But they are probably as much of a drupe as, say, an almond is. Where technically, yeah, okay, it's a drupe, but it's like this weird leathery thing that doesn't quite really.
Sure.
It doesn't exemplify the spirit of drupe.
It ain't no avocado.
It's no avocado. It's no cherry. It's nothing like that. So they're just fine, and they end up taking a year to mature. So during the springtime, the flowers come out, the fruit is, or the seeds are fertilized. Then, bloop, 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 give it another year. So springtime, this coming spring, there will be flowers, and the fruit from those flowers will be mature next summer.
Oh, wow.
But the flowers that came on last spring are producing this year's fruit. So it's kind of offset by a year.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
That is odd.
Yeah, it's a little odd, but I kind of like it.
What is that?
It's just timing. They just have to mature, you know? It's a lot like acorns on oak trees.
Okay.
We have white oaks, and the white oaks will produce their acorns in 1 year, whereas red oaks will produce their acorns after 2 years.
I always forget about that.
Yeah,
it
so
seems
just-
like such a long time.
It does, right? But it's just maturing. Everything is slowly getting built and put into place.
Okay.
Yeah. So there you go. Now you got that. So the other thing that is really the whole reason that anyone would want this tree around, other than it's of course beautiful shape because it has that nice kind of beautiful form.
Sure.
Is what's covering that form.
That's right.
Which is the bark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex is like, yes.
Let's
love bark.
do it. This bark is remark.
The bark of this tree first starts out green. So on young stems, it's like this bright green, which is photosynthetic. I should note.
Is that so?
The leaves, Alex, are what we call kind of semi-deciduous or semi-evergreen. Other terms are tardily deciduous, which means essentially it keeps its leaves for about a year. And remember, the definition for an evergreen tree is that they keep their leaves for more than 1 year.
Sure.
So if you have a tree that's kind of like almost to a year and then it kind of like, I'm just going to drop my leaves, and then it puts on immediately a new flush, is that technically evergreen? Is it really important?
I'm saying
not
no.
really. So what happens though is during, say, hurricane season or something, its leaves will just get completely blown off. And it'll just be like, yeah, whatever. And all these small green stems will do photosynthesis.
Wow.
So they'll photosynthesize from these tiny, small, green, bark-covered, smaller twigs.
It's like a backup generator.
Exactly. It's exactly like what it is.
That's super cool.
And then in the springtime, it puts out its new flush of leaves.
Wow. How about
Yeah.
that? But
Now-
you said that's on the young bark.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. The older bark, as the stems get a little bit larger, the outer bark fades from green to this kind of coppery orange reddish color.
Yeah.
And then it starts to just tear itself apart and it just exfoliates out in the most beautiful colors.
What's under there?
It's other bark, but it's all layers, right? So year 1, the cork cambium produces bark. Then year 2, it produces a new layer of bark underneath the year 1 bark. So on and so forth until the outer bark essentially dies because it's not as connected to all the systems.
Oh, sure.
And then it stops producing the things that all the green chloroplast needs. So they essentially die and starts to change color.
Okay, so it is a lot like a snake molting or
Yes.
shedding its skin.
Yeah, sure, yeah, there's
It has
gonna be
just
that new
fresh
layer.
skin underneath.
Precisely.
Like they shed their skin and it's like, they're like a horror movie. under
Exactly. Then they have to regrow under the skin. No, you're right. They did not put the cart before the horse. They have everything in the proper order.
They do it and they're like, oh, fuck, I forgot to grow new skin.
Jeez, why did I do that? Man.
I'm a meat puppet.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So as that happens and the stems get older, when the outer bark starts to exfoliate off in this gorgeous reddish color, then the bark underneath it is also the same beautiful coppery, bronzy color.
Okay, so the green photosynthesis bark is
Yeah.
only on the younger ones.
Correct.
And then it doesn't ever come back to the green photosynthesis.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
So-
just a way to like help the tree survive its early years.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff in trees.
Well, early years, but also as it's bigger, it'll be all the twigs out at the ends of the canopy. So it'll be like the
Oh,
twigs
sure. Okay.
early years, not necessarily the tree itself.
I see.
You're on to it. There you go.
Gotcha.
Now, so here's the thing, Alex. This tree has a name that is based on this lovely characteristic.
The bark?
Yes.
Okay.
It's called the tourist tree.
Okay.
Do you know why?
Because tourists get sunburned.
Yes.
Really?
That's exactly it.
And their skin peels off.
And it looks like this tree.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
literally why.
That's amazing.
And every time people apparently tell tourists that when they come down
Yeah.
to Florida and they learn about it, they all kind of chuckle to themselves because they themselves are probably horribly sunburned. And they're looking at this tree and the tree's like, yeah, me too, man.
That's incredible. I was
Isn't that
making a
funny?
joke, but that's real.
Yeah, spot on.
Cool.
Good joke.
I have to say there's this one particular photo of this tree where it just looks so fleshy.
Oh,
I think
really?
it's anytime a tree has that like very smooth bark, I'm like, oh, it looks like I don't know, it just looks like gangrene flesh.
Weird. Yeah, okay. You look at a different picture, Alex, because the rest of them are gorgeous.
And I kind of like it.
And I kind of like it. You are so morbid, man.
It's kind of turning me on.
All right, I'm going to like this Palo Alto. We got to purify this
He has
area.
to clean the air.
Jesus.
After I said that.
All right. I'm feeling better now.
But I do love a nice smooth bark. I love touching a nice smooth bark.
It really is pleasant.
It
That's very
feels
true.
like sanded wood.
Yes,
It's
it
like,
really
this-
does, yeah.
the finished product, you
right.
know?
And all this actually really, if anyone wants to feel like they're looking at a Gumbo-Limbo tree, just go in I should say over here in the West, go find yourself a madrone. And that is, I think, the best analogous that we can have. It has evergreen foliage that is tardily deciduous to
Yeah.
semi-evergreen. It grows in weird, contorted ways. It doesn't like to stay upright.
Totally.
It grows in not the worst possible soils, but not the best soils in the world. And it has that bark that is red and exfoliates and is either smooth underneath or it creates this kind of patchwork as it gets larger and bigger.
Yeah. That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
But they're not related.
They're not related.
Not even close.
Yeah, they're in different families and different kind of zones entirely.
Okay. Well, my big question before we get into today's chat, Casey,
Yeah.
is where does the name Gumbo-Limbo come from?
I'm so happy to hear that.
The only thing I can think of, Limbo, is a game where you try to walk under. It's my nightmare. I fucking hate Limbo.
Oh, yeah.
You try to walk under a bar that gets progressively lower and
Yeah,
lower.
yeah.
And these branches kind of go out as if they were like a limbo
Hey,
bar.
yeah, I like that. That's
Kind of.
I think that's fair. That's
Okay.
good enough.
But that's probably not what it is.
Not as far as I know.
Okay.
Apparently, no one's quite sure, other than they think that it has heritage from African Americans in this area. So,
Gumbo.
Yeah, exactly. Or I should say it just has African heritage because it is named for all the peoples that were in all of these places, not necessarily the specific group that we now call African Americans here in the United States. These are other people who are of African descent who got brought via the slave trade in every way to all of these other islands in this area.
Okay.
So they, of course, brought their own heritage and then adapted that to their new surroundings and found this new tree. And so the name probably comes from different languages that are of African descent.
Cool.
At least certainly the gumbo and the limbo part. But no one's 100% sure. It's just kind of one of these vernacular names. It just kind of went plop. It just happened.
Yeah.
It
And
doesn't-
the source is kind of lost to time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now it does have a some amount of reference to do with the soup gumbo. You're familiar with gumbos?
Oh, yeah.
So not really quite sure why, but that is related to a kind of a thick soup, right? A thick and kind of almost slimy because it has okra in
That's
it.
right.
Now you take that and you compare it to a kind of muddy soil type after a big rain in this very wetland-esque area.
Okay.
Apparently they call that gumbo as well.
How about that?
So the name gumbo probably comes from kind of where this tree grows, but also the sap that is produced by the wood. Because it's very sticky to the point where it was used to actually catch birds.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Used to catch birds.
Yes.
Oh, like you swing a stick with a bunch of sap on it and try to snag a bird out of the air?
Yes, but also they would just like cover branches.
Oh, sure, make
with
a trap.
sap.
Okay.
Exactly. The birds would land on it and they couldn't get away.
A sap trap.
Exactly. A sap trap for poor trees.
That's-
no, for poor birds on saplings.
There's something
There's
here.
something here. I'll have
we
to.
have the components to build this machine. That's interesting, Case.
Yeah, exactly. So
Cool.
the name came from all those kind of different places. But yeah, no one is 100% sure. They can't say, oh, it came from this thing. I think some Bantu languages are involved, which is an African language.
Okay, great.
It's a tree with kind of all these weird different origins.
Yeah.
And while I was learning about it, Alex, I thought to myself, this tree's got something for everyone.
Wow.
Got something for everyone.
Tell me more.
Well, first, it is, as we've discussed, a gorgeous looking tree.
It is.
From far away, from close up, it is a tree that people like to plant in their front yards. It grows really well. Not only does it grow really well, but it is hurricane resistant.
Tell me more.
Well, you're familiar with hurricanes and their force.
Their ilk.
Yes.
Yes.
And their ilk.
Your tornadoes, your twisters.
Your typhoons and things. Yes.
Yes, yeah, huh?
Yeah, so it is common. In fact, we have covered a couple trees. The laurel oak is an example that just gets toppled over because their roots just, for whatever reason, don't really hold it up very well. And it just gets knocked apart during hurricanes. You get a lot of damage. Well, there are some trees that apparently are like, no, I've been doing this for a really long time, and this is where I grow and how I grow. I can take the force. And this is one of them. It's known as a very strong hurricane-resistant tree.
Okay.
While a bunch of other trees could get knocked over and completely ravaged, it may lose its leaves, but it's just like, yeah, I'm fine. It just stays.
It's got kind of that like linebacker thing where it's like low to the ground
Yeah,
and
yeah,
wide.
totally.
You know,
I think you're probably onto something
harder
there.
to knock over.
Exactly. Yeah. I 100% think that you're onto something with
Yeah.
that. That is interesting because it also has shallow roots, which is very curious to me.
Why is this curious to you?
Because shallow rooted plants don't tend to have a really good foundation. They're more like, I'm just going to take what I can get right here on the surface. I want a lot of water. I want a lot of air. And then they usually have, something underground, which is forcing them to do this. Often it's like waterlogged soils or something like that.
Giant rock or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this like a live fast, die young type of trees? Only have really shallow root systems?
I think so. Tend to be, yeah.
Okay.
Now,
So why put the energy into it?
exactly. But that's also where all the nutrients and water are, right? That's like if you get a bunch of water and everything on the top of the soil, that's where you're going to grow. So most trees will be growing in the top 2 to 3 feet of soil anyway. But this being a notably very resistant tree to be knocked over during hurricanes, it would make me think that its roots are doing something different than other trees that do get knocked over, that have these same kind of like, I say shallow, meaning they're not like 10 feet deep roots.
Sure.
They're 2 to 3 feet. So it's really kind of like, okay, so if you have really shallow roots like kind of everyone else, what makes you so special? Why do you stand up? Not sure. Don't know.
Okay.
I think it's probably very fibrous roots. So essentially, they break down into very small, tiny little root hairs everywhere very quickly and produce a lot of them, so that their fibrousness intertwines with the soil particles and the rocks and everything in the ground, and thus it creates a very strong system built on surface area.
Sure.
It's like with ropes or something, where you create such an amount of surface area as they're braided together. They're touching so much that the friction is so high that it's going to be really strong.
Oh, is that how a rope works?
Yeah, exactly. All the little braids. So a really strong rope is made of a material that's not just going to snap in half, but also you can make it with hair, which you can just pull hair and it's going to break. Or the silk from a silkworm, things like that. One strand, not that strong. But if you wrap them all together, then they create a huge amount of friction all amongst each other. And now you're not actually pulling on one, you're pulling on 1,000 at the same time.
Right.
And each one of those are also creating friction next to each other. So it kind of spreads the load out really intensely.
Okay.
So that's probably what I think is happening here with the Gumbo-Limbo.
Interesting. I do love those really fine hair root structures.
Yeah.
It's just so satisfying.
It's really beautiful.
I'm imagining like pulling some kind of vegetable out of the ground and it's got tons of hairs all over it. And it's like it comes with like 10 pounds of soil.
Yeah.
I'm not
So many.
letting
Yeah.
go that easy.
Yeah, I know exactly. And you're like, well, I'm going to bash you against this shovel until all that soil comes off and we'll throw you in the compost.
I'm going to eat you.
Yeah, exactly. But here's another fun thing. It sends out roots like nobody's business.
Wow.
So you will often find this tree planted as a living fence.
Okay.
Isn't that fun?
Like a hedge tree almost?
Yeah, almost.
Cool.
Yeah. But imagine how they do it. They take cuttings from branches and they just pop them in the ground like a willow. And then it just sends out new roots from the side.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it starts growing in no time. So essentially, it's a tree that as soon as it touches soil, it is like, okay, cool, roots now, baby. And it becomes a new tree.
Casey, is this a tree such as a willow
Yes.
that grows by the water and creates a very dense, hairy root structure that helps keep the bank intact, keeping it from eroding?
Precisely.
Okay.
Essentially. Although, funny enough, it doesn't enjoy waterlogged soils.
Okay.
This is another fun thing about this tree.
It's like a 8 foot tall person who's built for basketball. And they're like, I don't really like sports.
It's not my favorite thing.
I love programming on my computer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just this interesting. It's interesting in that it will grow roots very quickly, but it does not do it in the same way that other trees do that. Like you're saying, like a cottonwood does this all the time. Like willows do this all the time. Trees that you expect to grow in wetland areas.
Sure.
But our tree grows in upland areas.
Wow.
Not only does it do that, but it does it in distinctly lowland areas.
It grows in upland areas, in lowland areas.
Correct.
In the upland it's like a medium land.
Well, actually, Alex, the term you're looking for is hummock or hammock.
Hammock. Speaking of rope, huh?
Yeah, there you go, right?
Speaking of sharing the load.
Now, this is actually a really interesting thing that I am kind of curious about.
I've heard of hummocks.
Yes.
I think I'm having one right now in my hip.
Alex, are you okay? Jesus.
Oh, got a hummock.
I got a hummock. Hold on.
I think hummock was one of those, in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings.
Uh-huh.
He uses every geographical phrase in the book.
Oh, yeah.
And hummocks probably showed up in that book.
Yeah, I think it should. It's a really fun little addition to geology, don't you think?
Well, tell me more. I really honestly don't know what it is.
Okay, well, I had to look this up because I've heard of hummocks, but I have not heard of hammocks.
Okay.
Which, if I'm understanding all these things correctly, I'm pretty sure they're basically the same thing.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Now, a hammock is specifically a hardwood hammock in the Everglades National Park. It is this upland space in between these kind of lowland, wet, and kind of swampy areas. So it is above everything else to the point where it is kind of a dry, it's a dry forest surrounded by swamps. So you get these dry, more drought tolerant trees like the Gumbo-Limbo growing on the top of them. So they're an interesting part of like these lowland habitats because they are not the lowland habitat specialists. They grow in between that.
Interesting.
So let me give you a kind of an opposite example.
Okay.
In the Pacific Northwest, we have a lot of rain, but we also have a lot of big, tall mountains and trees. So the standard is a Douglas fir and a western hemlock and all these trees growing in these nice upland areas. And then we say, now that is a riparian area. And that is the different thing. That's the exception to the rule.
Okay.
In the Everglades, it's exactly the opposite. The rule is lowland, swampy area.
I see.
And the exception are these little tiny upland zones.
The hummocks.
The hammocks, right there.
Okay.
So this tree grows and is one of the more dominant species on these hammocks, where they just
Oh.
grow right on top. They do not like to have their feet wet. They can take a little salt kind of inundation, but not a lot, not for a long time. They
Okay.
do not appreciate having their feet soaked for any amount of time.
I just love to think about you talking about a person like this. Like you're their manager, and you
don't like
you
this.
show up beforehand. And they need this in their trailer. They do not like to have their feet wet.
Not even for a little bit. But if you do have soil on the ground with some salt in it, that's fine. It's just not wet.
Here he comes. Here he comes.
Here he comes. Hey, Gumma. Hey, Gumbo. How you doing? Yeah, so that is it's kind of a funny little thing.
Well, can I like repeat back to you what I
Yes,
hear, because I'm
yes.
a little confused.
Okay.
So in the Everglades, which is Everglade is a both a geographical thing and a place, right?
I think, yeah, in this instance, yes, because it's a national park.
So there are some upland areas, which just means like higher elevation, and drier, away from the swampiness.
Yeah.
Those are called hummocks, and that's where these trees like to grow, even though they appear to be water-loving trees. They are not water-loving trees.
Correct.
They like a nice dry hammock in the sun.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's right.
Cool.
And that's where they live.
Interesting.
Now, not only that, Alex, not only that, here in the United States, in Florida, which is a place that I'd like to go, specifically the Everglades. I've been to Florida a few times.
Oh.
But they also grow in a very unique habitat that's kind of similar, but down in Mexico on the Yucatan Peninsula.
Oh.
Now, are you familiar with the cenotes in this area?
Yeah.
What, could you tell us? Could you tell the class, please?
They're like giant, basically underwater caves that people love to swim in.
Yeah, exactly. But not only are they caves, they're kind of just like these huge holes in the ground. And they usually are because the foliage and things on the top of this kind of area, because it's a tropical jungle. They drop all of their leaves and things, they start to decay, and it raises the acidity of rainwater ever so slightly that it actually goes down and erodes the limestone base. It's called karst. It's a soil type of this underlying bedrock. Karst, yes, or karst, I should say. I think it's more proper. So karst is slowly but surely dissolved, and it creates these big holes, these cenotes. Meanwhile, this happens also out on the coast. But the Yucatan has like this really intense aquifer underneath it. So fresh water falls into these, and that is kind of what you're seeing. None of this is a saltwater produced kind of cave or hole. So a lot of different plants can grow there. Now, on the very top western side of the Yucatan, there is a specific set of mangroves, which I believe is called the Perines or Perines. I can't decide which because I like to say it one way, but then I think to myself, Casey, that's Spanish. You should say that in the Spanish way.
Okay.
So it's Perenes. So that is this section of mangroves. They grow on this side of the Yucatan. And it is such a special place that it's actually a UNESCO heritage site.
Oh, wow.
In terms of a biosphere kind of zone that they need to protect.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about it is that they have this unique mixture of these cenotes on kind of one side that are these freshwater upwellings of water that have created the conditions that freshwater plants that are growing directly next to, adjacent to, and with and around saltwater marshes that have saltwater mangroves, like the red mangrove and other mangrove species, white mangrove, black mangrove, all these things.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like this interesting estuary where you have a river normally, which is fresh water, coming off of land, going into the ocean, and the ocean is moving up and it's kind of moving back, and so you just always have this kind of intermixture of fresh and salt water. So on one side you get these really intensely only saltwater kind of plants. On the other side, you get only these intensely not saltwater, freshwater plants. And in between, you get species that can take brackish conditions.
Brackish. Just
yeah.
kind of salty.
Exactly. It's just a mixture of both, right?
Okay.
So this is what this entire ecosystem, add in then tropical forest on top of that, and that's what's going on in this area.
Cool.
And the Gumbo-Limbo tree is a huge component of it. It grows in the same kind of upland areas that have the freshwater cenotes kind of, or at least these, if not a true cenote, it's a just some amount of aquifer water that's coming up from the ground.
Okay.
That's where they grow.
Interesting.
So they are a part of that, and then you just walk a couple feet in one direction, and there's a whole red mangrove forest right over there as well, with all the equivalent animals and biodiversity growing on it.
What a fun place.
Isn't that just a crazy thing?
I love when kind of geography kind of like presents this curious little like unique, interesting place.
Yeah.
And just like a bunch of weird shit happens with the flora and fauna.
Yes.
I love when that happens.
It's just great.
So fun.
And this is
Sichuan, it's kind of the same way, right?
Yes, it is. It totally is. Like the geology, the weather, all the different components come together to create something super unique and interesting.
It's like lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I love that term.
Cool.
So that is what's going on with this tree in this specific spot. So all of these things kind of add together to create a tree that, in my opinion, has something for everyone. Birds love to eat the fruit. It looks beautiful in your front yard. It looks gorgeous in your parks. It can grow in places that otherwise get hammered and where other trees rather cannot survive.
Sure.
So it's just kind of this like tree that's like, yeah, I'm built for right here. Now, we've had people in this area for thousands upon thousands of years. They've also noticed that this tree that has all these other great properties also is extremely useful in the same way that this Palo Santo is. This is so closely related. They're in the same genus. And this Palo Santo has all this black smoke that was coming off of it because it's burning all of the sap. I actually got a message from my friend Matt Foljam the other day, and he said, "What kind of tree is this?" And it was a Scots pine. And I was like, "Oh, this is Scots pine." He's like, "Why is the smoke black?" I'm like, "Oh, it's because you're burning the sap. So you have a whole tree, and it's fresh enough that the sap is still there and is actively burning, and it burns black because it's more like turpentine, right? Like it has all these other different naturally derived but weird chemicals. Those weird chemicals inside this tree give it these properties that people love. Most notably, they use it for incense. They make decoctions out of the sap and the leaves and twigs and the fruit and all these kinds of things. And it is in the same family as other trees that we have known about for many years, and we've thought to ourselves, this is a special tree because of the scent that it has.
This is the Palo Santo family.
This is, yes.
Which is...
Burseraceae.
Right, Burseraceae.
Now, do you know what other trees are in this group?
Sandalwood?
Not sandalwood. I'll give you a
cinnamon.
hint. Not cinnamon. No.
Nutmeg?
Nope. Now, these don't have aromatic...
Sure they do.
They don't have aromatic wood that we use for, I don't know, giving to baby messiahs.
Sandalwood does. Oh... Myrrh?
Yes! There we go.
Spelled M-U-R.
No one gave... That's exactly right. No one gave sandalwood to the little baby Jesus.
They could have in an alternate universe. We don't know.
Yeah, well, Alex, we're not living in that alternate universe.
If they had, we would be talking about the divine properties of sandalwood.
That's true. And then we would, probably still cut a bunch of them down and have to, talk to the native peoples to say, how can we manage this better? Yes, this is the family of frankincense and myrrh.
Both are in the same family.
Both in the same family.
Wow, power couple.
Exactly. So this is a tree in a family that is known across the world, but this and Palo Santo are essentially the Western Hemisphere equivalent of those Eastern Hemisphere trees.
Cool, okay.
But Alex, unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about those other trees today.
Oh, if only we had a way to talk about them in at a different time.
At a different time, in a different place.
Wow.
I.e. next week.
All right. That was our discussion of the Gumbo-Limbo and a nice little teaser for next week. We have to take a quick break, but when we get back, we'll give this tree a rating right here on Completely Arbortrary. Welcome back. Hey, toss me that little Santo.
Yeah, you want this? Here you go. Wah! Now, just to be clear,
Give me that lighter there.
I'm taking that back at the end of the day.
I understand.
Yeah, sure you do.
Can I buy this at just a little shop?
Yeah, you can get it all over the place.
A little witch shop. All right.
Yeah.
I'm lighting the Palo Santo.
Yep. Clear the air while we give it a review and a rating. Here's how it works, folks. You listen to the podcast, and we talk about what we think about this tree.
Well, Casey, it's time to give this tree a rating. Here's how it works. We're going to give some final thoughts. Give it a rating of 0 to 10. Golden cones of honor.
Uh-huh.
Let's begin with you, our resident expert.
That sounds good. This tree I find to be just a delight. I have only been familiar with Palo Santo through some other friends who had it in their bathroom, so that if you defiled the space, you could cleanse it. And
yeah, if you purged your demons.
Exactly. Then you could purge the demons from the space that you let them out into. So I learned about it, and I had no idea like how to do it or what to do. And then I realized, you can just like light it on fire and then just kind of let it sit there.
Sure.
And I have yet to really get good at like just lighting it and setting it and like having it kind of slowly be an ember almost. So I'm working on my technique.
Sure, yeah.
But all that to say, that is one of the most interesting and fun properties that I think you can have from a tree is just, here's the wood. It actually sucks for almost everything else. You can carve it, so it's like, it's nice. Here's an interesting thing that we didn't talk about. Sorry to add this in. I know you hate this.
No, I'm fine.
It was used as the main species to carve animals from, specifically horses and other unique characters for carousels.
How about
Historic. That's like everyone's favorite fact.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The Gumbo-Limbo?
The Gumbo-Limbo tree.
Wow. Okay, why?
No clue. It's I think. Well,
Just sounds
I guess
like Mario.
Yeah, I do have. You did. You did.
Wow.
It actually is. I do know why, because it's it's just easily carved. So you can just get in there and shape it, and it's a very nice, easily worked wood.
Okay.
Decays quickly. Doesn't do anything else fancy or anything like that. And it's not really a species that you're like, oh yeah, this wood is like, wow.
Sure.
It's more just like, yeah, there's some wood, great. And then it's other species closely related to it, light on fire, they smell great. So this is also a beautiful tree. I love the bark. Obviously, I love the form with the bark on top of it. It gets to like 2 or 3 feet in diameter also. So like it can become a pretty substantial looking tree. Like it can really keep its own. And then it's not going to fall over in a hurricane. So I dig this tree for so many different reasons. And I have to really like try to compare it to other things. I don't think we need to plant more of them because I think they grow pretty much everywhere. The birds make sure of that. So Alex, I think I'm going to give this an 8.1.
Wow.
An 8.1 because of all these things.
Okay.
And it's one of these things. I mean, we didn't really talk about anything more than the tree this episode.
Sure, this is a fun fact episode.
This is a fun fact episode. Here's a bunch of interesting things.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do think that this tree is like, I don't know, it's an everybody's tree. I cannot find anyone who's like, Gumbo-Limbo.
Sure.
Like everyone seems to be like, oh, Gumbo-Limbo. Yeah, sweet. That's great.
It's pretty inoffensive.
Yeah, it's like that friend that you always like see at a party. Like no one ever knows who invites them, but they always show up and everyone's stoked all the time. Like, oh, sweet, Gumbo-Limbo's here. I love hanging out with Gumbo-Limbo. Who invited Gumbo-Limbo? I don't care. Great idea. That's kind of what I feel like about the Gumbo-Limbo tree.
8.1?
8.1.
Great score.
Yeah, the only reason it doesn't get anything higher is because, well, it's also kind of fun when it poisons things and, it attacks things and does cool shit like that and grows. And, there's a couple things that I'm like, you know what? If you were 400 feet tall, yeah, I'd give you that.
Yeah.
But
it's in all the ways that a tree is a tree, it's kind of like, eh.
Exactly. Yeah. But all the other small things that it does, it's perfect.
Lovely review, Casey.
Thank you.
Here's mine. I think this tree is cool. I love the way it looks. Beautiful. The leaves I could take or leave.
Yeah, I heard that.
Take or leave. But the bark totally makes up for it. The morphology totally makes up for it. Mm-hmm. I love that it is a tree that, really holds it together in terms of its sturdiness in the face of adversity. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're not going to knock me over.
No, you're not going to do it.
And if you do, who gives a shit?
It'll just put out new roots.
What a great line. I'm just going to burn some more Palo Santo.
Yeah, that was you got to cleanse this area from that. That wasn't. I don't know how I feel about it.
Anyhow, listen, I love this tree, and I'm going to give it a 7.99 repeating.
Really? All the way down to the end?
I can't quite go to 8.
It's approaching 80. Why not? Why can't you get there? What's holding you back?
I don't know. It doesn't grow up fruit.
Oh, well, it does.
Well, it doesn't grow a fruit that I love to eat.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
If I were a bird, maybe I would give it an 8.
Yeah, well, I've always thought about this. You've seen the movie Birdman, correct?
Yes, yeah. My last name is Crowson.
It's true. So you're basically a bird.
I could try. I'll try to eat it.
All right. That's the spirit we want to hear, Alex.
What do you want from me?
Yes, thank you.
That was our review of the Gumbo-Limbo case. It's time for a completely arbitrary AMA, where one of our lovely fungal associates asks us a question on arbitrarypod.supercast.com. You become a Treemium member and ask us questions, get lots of cool things in return, ad-free listening, merch store discounts, Cone Club stickers, etc., etc.
Yes.
Casey.
Alex.
This week's question is more like a prompt.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It comes from Stephanie.
Hello, Stephanie.
Stephanie linked to an article.
Okay.
The article's headline is Poisoned Trees Gave a Wealthy Couple a Killer View and United Residents in Outrage.
Yes. Okay. I actually am familiar with this article.
Yes, I am too, because I read it. Here's what happened. A couple used tebutheron.
Tebutheron.
It is a potent herbicide. They used it to kill trees.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Oh, we know why.
They wanted a better view. Rich people.
I know. And honestly, the very first photo on this shows the dead trees and the house and everything. Like, it's so clear.
Yes, it's very miserable looking.
It's just like, oh my God.
But here's what happened, Casey.
Yeah, keep going. Sorry, Stephanie.
Well, they didn't like these trees being in their way.
Yeah.
So they used a fucking herbicide to kill the trees. Now, they also live right next to a beach in a little forest. And they fucked up the local environment with this herbicide.
Naturally.
They've now paid $1.7 million in fines, which, listen, I guess if you're rich, if you're super rich, that's maybe not a ton. Mm-hmm. But does that feel like a lot to you?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel a lot to me. It doesn't.
Okay.
And the reason why is, you keep reading through the article and they kind of address it. So a main thing, and also we should say, is that what Stephanie would like to hear about?
Yeah.
That's the question. Okay.
A prompt. Hey, talk about this.
Okay. Sounds good, Stephanie.
Yeah. Thanks, Steph.
So here's the thing, is that it's fine if you have a fine for something. It's fine if there's a fine for something, because it usually deters normal people.
Sure, yeah.
But there's an old show on, I think, Stars or something that, I never watched it. I just saw these advertisements for it. It was like some guy became a billionaire. And he was like, yeah, okay, cool. I used to care about things, and now I'm a billionaire, and I just don't give a shit.
Sure.
And like the money as a fine no longer even registers as something that will deter you from doing something.
Totally.
Like it just doesn't matter to you anymore. So a fine, if someone said, hey, Alex, great, here's $80,000 of a fine, then you're like, oh my God, my life is over.
Yeah, it would
like,
ruin me.
What can I do? It's like every dime that I make for the rest of my life is going to pay this fine.
But if you gave that same fine to Tom Brady.
Yes. He would be like, well, that sucks. But like, he wouldn't even bat an eye.
Yeah.
This
he wouldn't
happens.
notice it missing from his bank account.
Yeah. It happens in sports all the time. Now, amp that up from professional athlete to billionaire, to millionaire upon millionaire. Then you're really getting to the point where they're like, yeah, honestly, if I just want this view, and so specifically what happened is there's this house that was on the beach side or right next to the ocean. Behind it, on the lot behind this house, this beachfront house, is another house that has trees in between. Mm-hmm. Those large oak trees are this buffer zone between house A on the beach, who's like, great, I have my private property, I am a billionaire, and I can just sit here and enjoy my space. And I have my nice big forest trees behind me.
Yeah.
Those forest trees, though, caused the property behind you not to have a good view. So they then killed them, and their calculation probably went something like this. How much would it cost to cut down these trees? Someone said, well, you're going to have to trespass. Then once you trespass, it'll cost to actually do the work. And then if we get caught, they're going to, kick us out. So we have to do it in kind of a surreptitious way. So we have to do all this planning for it. Then on top of that, someone's going to find out and you're going to get fines for it. And they say, how much are the fines? And then they calculate, okay, that's just the cost of doing business. It's not a fine.
I see.
It's essentially the cost. So it's like, okay, to get a house is, $100 million. And you're like, great. Well, I'm just going to pay $100 million and I have my house. This is the same thing. It's not a slap on the wrist. They don't view it in the same way.
Right.
It's just the cost of doing business.
It's the cost of getting rid of these trees.
Exactly.
And they did it they did it knowing that it was fucked up, knowing that it was against the law.
Yep.
Knowing that it was going to impact everybody else. It's, I don't want to give them like the benefit of the doubt. I mean, like maybe they didn't know what was going to happen. Like they knew.
They knew.
They
Of course
didn't
they knew.
give a shit.
No, they
People
did not.
this rich don't fucking care about you.
No, and a lot of times the only way you can give them the benefit of the doubt is that they say, get it done. And they don't really care the method at this point. Mm-hmm. So I have zero sympathy for these people who did the cutting because one, I actually care about the trees a lot. Where I'm like, no, these trees are important.
Sure.
It is also important to the person who is even more rich, who's actually the someone related to the LL Bean family. So
Yes.
they're like quite well off themselves, which means they can just like fight back. So what if it was
Bean
like
himself?
Yeah, right. What happened to my trees? So, I'm just like, okay, so this is like only making news because it's a rich person's neighborhood and one rich person wronged the other rich person and is throwing their weight to, do whatever needs to be done.
Totally.
But also the LL Beans, like they're a whole outdoor company. Like they're on the better side of history than say, I don't know, an oil company or something like that. But the point is that if this was happening to poor people in a poor space, which I've been involved with when I was working as a consultant up in Seattle,
sure.
This no one can just be like, well, I'm going to get a giant lawyer and I'm going to have all these other people come in and do all this informational work to figure out what the damage and the extent is. They're just more like, well, I can tell the cops and hope that they're going to do something about it, but I can't afford to create a whole stink about it. Like, I just can't. I don't have that kind of money. That $80,000 is not going to me. I could maybe sue him, but that's not feasible. I can't afford all that stuff. So rich on rich action here is, I don't know. It's there's so many different moral things that I hate about it. So is $1.7 million enough or whatever that price is? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, because it is just a cost of doing business. You should do something even more intensely for these people. What do they value? If everyone else in the world who's poor values money because that's how we do something, what do they value? What will actually affect them?
Interesting.
I don't know. Take their kid and put them into an environmental camp for 3 years as an old-fashioned kind of way. What did they do back in the old days? You took a hostage. So like you would say, okay, we're having a marriage pact and we're going to make sure that
a ward.
Exactly. Your family does not affect my family later. So you're going to send one of your children to to my court. I'm going to send one of my children to your court.
Send Myrcella to Dorn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get it. So why don't we just do the same thing? Like, great, we're taking your kid away for 3 years and we're going to put him into an environmental institution where they're going to learn everything about how to take care of the environment. And you're not allowed to talk to them other than sending them mail that has to come across the continent by horse.
And then they come out very radical and they take down mom and dad.
Exactly.
Like a great HBO series.
Yeah, we can make that happen.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm being a little facetious here, but god damn it. Like, I don't know, do something to them. If money isn't enough, you should make the fines somehow a percentage, you know? So it's
sure.
like, great, you know, $80,000 to me, to you, a lot. $80,000 to a billionaire, not a lot. But what about 20%? You know?
Sure.
What about a percentage?
A tax?
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, yeah, I agree that the money is like pitifully small when you consider that they're fucking billionaires.
Yeah.
But also, I hope and pray that when this story came out, they were like, fuck. Like now they are hated deeply by everybody in this city and, many other people outside of the city because this news article blew up.
This is on NPR.
Yeah. Fuck these people.
Yeah, you'd think so, but I am slowly learning with our politics. Even Jon Stewart is starting to get on this level where he's like, there is no decorum anymore.
Yeah, there's no legacy being left by any of these people.
Yeah, it used to be like, so he talked a lot about norms, and he was like, yeah, so this is the situation. If no one pays attention to the norms anymore and kind of has this other societal pressure that says don't do bad stuff, if you just don't care, if you just are beyond caring about that, then there is that just doesn't apply to you.
Yeah, the bar has been taken away.
Yeah,
it's not like it's been lowered. It's just been like
just gone.
They removed it overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you can just do and say whatever you want.
Exactly, and there's no repercussions for it. So in this case, you could be right. Maybe they do have the ire of their neighbors, but my guess is they just don't care, and they're just going to continue to do whatever it is they want to do, fly in on their private helicopter. And to be clear, I don't know if these are strictly billionaires, but it's a situation where they are making enough money to where they can live where they're living, honestly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just this is the kind of thing that makes me really salty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there, Case. Rich people taking advantage of situations, doing whatever they want without fear of repercussion, because we have made money, fines, like you said, a repercussion for everyone. But that doesn't affect people who have so much money that, you know, they won't notice it missing from their bank account. Yeah,
and then if you try to argue that legally, then oftentimes like you can't increase it because then you're like specifically targeting them in a very specific way, and they're like, well, that's not fair. You can't change the fine just because it's me.
Why isn't that fair?
Exactly, I agree. It's like that should be fair.
That is more fair.
Yes, that I believe is explicitly more fair.
So stupid
in the larger sense.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. If you've got a question for us, like I said, become a Treemium member, arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Support the podcast. We have got so many subscribers on Treemium, people supporting us in a monthly or annual basis. We are so grateful for all of them who literally keep the lights on and keep this show a-going.
They do. You're the best in the world.
Casey Clapp.
Alex Crowson.
Nice chat today, pal.
Thanks. I'm glad to talk about the Gumbo-Limbo, and I'm excited for next week.
I'm also excited for next week. Are we talking about specifically myrrh or frankincense and myrrh?
If I said I hadn't decided yet, would that be okay?
I think that would be great.
Okay, cool. I haven't decided yet. And I'm fine doing both. But really, I was planning to choose the more tree-like one because I think frankincense is a little bit bigger than myrrh. Well, one of them I think is a bit more tree-like than the other.
Frankincense has kind of the star quality, I think. If I say the myrrh tree to you, you know what? If I say frankincense, then you know, because the term is frankincense and myrrh.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, I have down here frankincense, Boswellia sacra.
Fun. Well, it will be quite seasonal and quite fun, as always.
It will. It's going to be right before Christmas, everyone.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's almost here.
It's almost here. And we thank you so much for spending your time with us today and listening to this episode of Completely Arbitrary. We'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.
Completely Arbitrary is produced by Alex Crowson and Casey Clapp.
Our artwork is by Jillian Barthold, and our music is by Aves and the Mini Vandals. If you want to support this podcast and become a Treemium member, head over to arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Thanks for listening.